The year is 56 BCE. Julius Caesar has just invaded Britannia with 2 entire legions. Only this picture, which is meant to show an artistic rendition of what Caesar looked like climbing the white cliffs of Dover with his men, is entirely inaccurate. You see, the soldiers depicted here look more like early imperial Roman soldiers, wearing lorica segmenta, rather than what we know Republican soldiers, especially in the late Roman Republic when Caesar was a general. We know what they look like, and they didn't look like this. So I decided to set out today to do a bit of hobbying, paint some miniatures I've had since last November, and paint them up historically to represent what a historical Roman legionary would have looked like at the end of the Roman Republic. So if you want to see how I painted historically accurate late Republican Roman legionaries, then I'll be showing you how I did that in this video. First, I do want to say that my medium here is going to be painting with miniatures. I am by no means an expert miniature painter, nor do I really think I'm qualified to do hobbying or painting tips, but I'm just doing this for a project, and I thought it'd be good fun to show how I did it. So I've been doing this for over a year now, about a year and 2 months. So yeah. That said, the models I'm using are from SPQR, which is the board game that is on screen now. They are late Republican legionary models, so that certainly helps a lot with accuracy because the models themselves are accurate. They are wearing just lorica as in a changed shirt rather than lorica segmenta. They're gladii, they're pila, etc. We'll get into that a bit later. So first things first, we had to prime the models. Now, I usually just prime them a standard gray, but for this project, I wanted to try something new. So I did zenithal highlights, which if you are familiar with miniature painting, it's nothing new to you. You spray them gray and then go back over the top with a white spray can. And so you shoot the white from just above the miniature, so it creates shadows. And it looks kind of like this, where you can see what parts of the miniature would be illuminated by the sun, assuming the sun is directly above them. I sort of did above and to the right a little bit, so it was kind of over their shoulder as a nod to how Caesar liked to fight with the sun to his back, kind of give the enemies every disadvantage he could. That said, I am a classics major. I'm kind of a Romanophile, I'd say, a military Roman history nerd. So I already owned this book here, which is a fantastic resource all about the Roman army from early Republican era with the Stati Principi Interiarii to late Republic to early Roman Empire, etc. It's a really great book. It has some really great facts and information, and so that's what I used primarily to see what colors an accurate Roman legionary would be. I did decide to be slightly ahistorical, which I know the title is I painted them historically, but the cloth that they would wear underneath the chainmail shirt, underneath the lorica, red cloth was not that easy to get, especially to mass produce for a state-sponsored army. So they'd usually just wear white, but I decided to use red because it's more of a Roman color, it's more striking, makes the model have more contrast, looks more visually interesting, and I wanted someone to be able to look at that model and not knowing anything about Rome be able to say that's a Roman legionary or whatever. So that was the idea. So here we are, we're starting to paint. I've got some Vallejo game color chainmail silver here, and this is what I'm going to be used to be painting the lorica, which is on, in this area of history, they're wearing the lorica hamata, which is just a chain shirt. But first we have to paint their gladius, which is a gladius Hispaniensis, I believe. It's inspired by the swords they encountered in Spain, so I'm pretty sure it's Hispaniensis. But anyways, I'm just applying some chainmail silver there. I'm okay using a brighter metal color because we're going to come over this with a dark wash of Nuln Oil, which is going to darken it and make it look a little bit more matte. And it's also going to fill in all the rivulets on that chain. It's going to look really good. So it doesn't matter too much about how I'm applying the paint here because this is my first coat that I'm putting on the model, first base coat. So if I get on another area, I'll just paint over it. It's not that big a deal. I do kind of wish I picked a different first color because on gray and white it is a little difficult to see where I'm applying the silver, but it definitely becomes easier to see later. I'm also filming on my phone, which is set up as a tripod on my dinner table, so if I don't get the best angles, I'm sorry about that. But I did want to show you, I'm painting 17 models, so I'm not going to show you how I paint every single model, but if I just show you how I paint one silver, that kind of shows you. I'm also just painting the dagger and the dagger's scabbard silver, just because I thought it'd provide a little bit too much contrast if I did it bronze or gold. And sorry, my finger's right in the frame, like I said. I'm still getting used to filming like this. But yeah, so that's the chainmail silver, and I do that on all the models where they're wearing the Lotica. So yeah, looking pretty good. So continuing with our base coats, we're going to do another metallic. I like to do metallics kind of together if I can. That way I can use the same brush so the metal flakes don't get in the other paints that I don't want to be metallic. And then I also like doing some people like to do the color that shows the least on the model. I kind of like to do the other way. I like to do the major colors first. And so given the type of helmet they wear, the Monteforte helmet, which is bronze, not steel. So that is why I'm painting it bright bronze from Vallejo. With this type of helmet, the gladius, and the outline of their scutum, their shield, that's kind of rounded like that in this period. That ends up being a lot of the model, so I decided to do that next. Overall, pretty pleased with the color combo that this invokes, plus it is historically accurate. In later steps, you'll see how I painted the shield and whatnot. But next, we're going to get to the next most prominent color, which is going to be red. And I'm going to be doing the red on their tunic in Mephiston red from Citadel color. Games Workshop, you know them. And then I'm going to be doing the shield in a lighter red, which is more accurate. The red on their cloth would, if they had been able to afford or had been given a red undercloak, it would have been a darker red than the shield, which is painted wood versus dyed cloth. These legionnaires are also wearing a feather dress, if you will, out of their helmet, which the evidence we have for that looks like we do have evidence in the helmets of the legionnaires that there's like this buckle or hook that seems like you could attach a ceremonial feather plume or headdress, or with the centurions and stuff, or generals, horsehair. Very iconic looking. But for battle, it wouldn't have been very good. Kind of the simplicity and beauty of the Roman helmet was you couldn't really grab a legionnaire by his helmet. So if you had this big feather sticking out, you know, they could do that, or hair sticking out, they could do that. It's also why Romans kept their hair short for battle. They couldn't grab them by the head. They didn't have beards, blah, blah, blah. It's all, you know, with the Romans, military culture, it's all about military. But for ceremony, like when you come back to Rome, cross the Pomerium on triumph, you know, having a bright red feather sticking out of your cap, you know, that's decadence right there. So, but these models include it because it makes them look a bit more Roman and a bit cooler. And it's not necessarily wrong. I mean, they might have worn them in battle. We just don't have great evidence of it. Regardless, it looks cool. So that's probably why they did it. And here we're getting to that lighter red I talked about. That's what we're going to do the shield with. We're back to Vallejo game color. This is going to be bloody red in their color line. So you can see here how I painted the bronze on the shield, the outline, and the buttress, and the main line down the middle. Now painting these shields was kind of a pain in the butt. You're going to see here, I get the red over the bronze. I mean, that's how it is when you paint like this. So, and this red is very light, so it's hard to get coverage too. So overall, I did have to end up coming over this again and just being like super precise and just use like a really small brush and just kind of use the edge of the brush almost to just pick up those raised edges of the shield with the bronze, and it ends up looking pretty good. You'll see the finished product at the end of the video, but overall you can see how the bronze and red create this really striking color scheme. You can see how the red on the shield is different than the red on Legionnaire. I do paint the back of the shields red too, because that seems to be what they did. So yeah, you can see some of the Legionnaires in the background I've already painted. Once again, I'm not showing how I paint every single Legionnaire. So, for example, the General that's included, and the Cornicern, and the Standard Bearer, I don't necessarily show how I paint them exactly, but it's basically the same thing. The Lorica gets silver, the brass items get, or bronze items get bronze, the red gets red. I mean, I use the same colors because they're supposed to look like a cohesive unit and army. So as this video is starting to get a little bit long, in the interest of time, I don't show some things I paint. So I use Vallejo charred brown for the brown things, like the pilum or pila of the legionnaires holding their pila, which is the javelin they would throw. I use skeleton horde on the slings. It creates this really nice brown color you'll see at the end on the slings, that they're lighter brown on top, dark brown on the bottom. It pools in the recesses, so it looks like there's a rock there. And then I'm using polished gold to paint the standard. Oftentimes it was an Aquila, an eagle standard, but this guy seems to be holding an ox or a Taurus, and it's not inaccurate. They would bear those for specific legions. Each legion kind of bared their own. Later in history, they would standardize that pretty much everyone had the eagle, but there were wolves, and boars, and oxes. And then I'm painting the top of the, basically the wolf skin that the standard bearer and the Cornicern wear. The Weletes, which were a light troop that had been phased out at this point in history, they used to wear fox or wolf heads on them, and so that seems to have carried over onto the standard bearers and stuff. Now I'm showing the Nuln Oil. As you can see, it's very thin, watery, but it's black. And I love this. If you're an aspiring painter or a new painter, use this. You can see the model on the left is before I've applied the Nuln Oil. The one on the right is after. And you can just see the detail, the shadows, the color. Everything is just so much better on the one after the Nuln Oil has been applied. You can see the individual rivulets on the armor. You can see the shadow in the headdress, the shadow in the helmet. The dagger is more defined. The hilt is more defined. I also didn't show it. I did paint their caligae, their boots, their shoes, with the charred brown that I used on the pila and the staff of the standard as well. I just didn't show it because it's kind of hard to show painting the shoes. So now the Romans did use, obviously they were over a very large period of time and over a large tract of land, so I wanted to show that through different skin tones. So I have a lighter skin tone, which is Cadian flesh tone, and a darker one, which is Bugsman's glow. And then for the face, to create definition so we can see their facial features, I'm doing a wash over that with Reichland flesh shade, which my label for that has fallen off. It got wet. So yeah, so I'm painting some with Cadian flesh tone, a lighter flesh tone, and some with Bugman's glow, both more Caucasian flesh tones, but does create a bit of variation so that every legionary does not look the same. You can tell they're from different parts of the Empire or the Republic at this time, and definitely it helps the unit to not look like a bunch of clones. That said, because I've already washed over everything else and painted every other base color, I'm being super careful with the skin tone here and where I apply it, as to not muck up anything I've already done. So that's why I'm not getting as great shots, because I'm really trying to not mess up. I've been painting for 7 hours at this point, and not all in one sitting, but I really do not want to have to go over and fix mistakes. I already fixed all my base coating mistakes before I did the Nuln Oil wash, and that took forever, as it always does, because especially with these shields, which now you can see the bronze and the red separation on the shields a bit better. You can see how I did. Just the edges, the raised edges of the shield were bronze and everything else is red. I also did not do red, I didn't do a Nuln Oil wash over the red on the shields, because over broad, flat areas, the Nuln Oil wash doesn't end up looking that good. It needs to kind of pool into the recesses, and over a broad, flat area, it just looks kind of streaky. But considering this is the final step, we've almost painted our legionaries here in a historically accurate color scheme. I'm just going to do some Sterling Battlemire on the bases, which I'm about to show you in a second, and then paint the rooms black, and they'll be complete. So unfortunately, I did lose the footage of me applying the Sterling Battlemire, but this is it. It is a Citadel technical paint, and when you use it on the base, it creates this mud-like effect. You can see it on the finished models here, which I took some pictures out in my garden, have them all set up. So you can see the slingers in the back with that, the paint I did on there. You can see the Sterling Battlemire, which now that's dried, it looks like mud or dirt, and I painted the base rooms black here. I also want to do a size comparison. So this is one of the minis next to pencil, just in case you've never seen a miniature before or of this scale. And then I just want to show you some of the finished products here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed and that you think I did a good job and that they look nice. I'm certainly really pleased with them. So yeah, thank you so much for watching.